I pulled into the gravel drive after 6 months in Seattle and slammed on the brakes so hard the coffee in my travel mug sloshed across the dash. 3-seater shingled cabins sat where my tomato rows used to be. A glossy sign read, Willow Ridge Estates, a planned community. A yellow violation notice flapped on my own front door like a surrender flag. $100 a day for 90 days. $9,000. 4 rules I never voted on. My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 58, divorced, and I like my 10 acres quiet. I expected dust and deer tracks, not swing sets, and a guy in flip-flops power washing a Tesla on my grass. The air smelled of fresh stained and cut pine instead of the usual hay and creek mud. My mailbox, plain black metal, bought at Tractor Supply, was gone. In its place stood a copper-finished cluster box with brass nameplates already engraved. A woman marched over with a clipboard and the brisk smile of someone who has never lost an argument with the lawn. Mr. Hayes, welcome home. I'm Ellen Carter, community manager. We saved your founder's packet in cabin 1. She handed me a folder thick as a phone book. My signature stared up at me on every permit, crisp and notarized on a Tuesday when I was 3,000 miles away presenting bug fixes to a room full of Microsoft VPs. The notary's embossed seal looked real enough to frame. I flipped pages under the porch light until 2 in the morning. The architectural renderings showed my vegetable garden replaced by a contemplative water feature. My old barn, where I still kept my dad's 1964 Ford pickup, was slated for demolition to make room for a yoga deck. Every sheet carried my name, my tax ID, my reputation. The cabins already had tenants. Margaret O'Donnell, 72, had sold her ranch style in town to downsize with dignity. She walked me through her new kitchen, pointing out soft-closed drawers and the grab bars she'd requested for aging in place. Tom and Sarah Brennan had sunk $20,000, every dime from a 401k rollover, into the promise of a playground their twins could walk to without crossing a road. Ellen herself had fronted $15,000 for soil tests, county stamps, and a landscape architect who charged by the native plant. Total take, north of $125,000. All of it collected by my business partner of 7 years, Daniel Pierce. Daniel and I met at a Chamber of Commerce mixer in 2016. He wore pressed khakis and a story about flipping lots in Arizona. I wore sawdust and a story about debugging legacy code for Boeing. We shook on a handshake deal to buy distressed parcels, clean titles, and resell to retirees looking for elbow room. 7 closings, no drama. I handled the spreadsheets. He handled the schmooze. I trusted him the way you trust the furnace to kick on in January. Daniel vanished 3 weeks earlier. Phone dead. Apartment empty. Our joint account short exactly $50,000. The same formation fee Ellen's ledger showed as paid in full. The withdrawal timestamp was 2:14 a.m. Pacific, the night I'd flown to Redmond for a sprint review. I still have the boarding pass. I spent that first night on the porch with a flashlight and a legal pad, matching timestamps. My loops on the letter Y were too tight in the forgeries. Daniel's were lazy figure eights. The notary date fell during a lunch I'd expensed at Canlis. Seared scallops, $42, itemized on the corporate card. Alibi tighter than a drum. Next morning, Deputy Laura Mendoza rolled up in a county cruiser. She'd seen the pattern before. Absent owner, slick partner, real permits, fake consent. 3 townships over. The same playbook had already cost 2 retirees their nests. Laura took statements, photographed documents, and promised a bolo on Daniel's silver Tacoma. She also left her card with a post-it, call anytime. Coffee's on me. That evening the 4 of us, Margaret, the Brennans, Ellen, and me, sat on folding chairs in the shell of cabin 2. No one yelled. We just laid the numbers bare. Margaret needed her deposit to keep Medicare supplements and the oxygen concentrator her late husband had used. The Brennans needed it for daycare, so Sarah could finish her nursing prerequisites. Ellen needed it to stay licensed. One more complaint, and the state board would yank her credentials. I needed my land back, period. We voted to freeze the bank accounts first, sue second, and here's where we got creative. Finish what Daniel started, only legally. Ellen still had the stamped plans. The cabins were built to code, wired for fiber, septic fields oversized. Why tear them down if we could own them? Margaret surprised us all by pulling a worn ledger from her purse. My husband kept books for the Elks Lodge for 30 years, she said. I can balance a checkbook in my sleep. Tom offered his construction contacts. Sarah offered to draft the new covenants in plain English. I offered server space and a Git repo for every receipt. Ellen offered to eat ramen for 6 months if we'd let her prove the permits were salvageable. We shook on it the way men used to seal cattle deals, over coffee and a sunrise. 2 days later, Laura radioed. Daniel was in county lockup 60 miles east, caught mid-pitch on a duplicate scam. The prosecutor offered a plea, 18 months plus full restitution from $180,000 frozen across 3 states. We took it. Cash hit our accounts in 45 days, wired from a credit union in Nevada we'd never heard of. The memo line on my check read, Hayes v. Pierce, restitution. I framed it above the barn workbench. We refiled the HOA ourselves. Every I dotted by the people actually living here. Monthly dues, $200 a door, voted on in the open. First expenditure, a real playground with rubber mulch. The twins tested themselves, sliding down the slide in sock feet to check for splinters. Second, a community room in the empty fourth bay, bookshelves from reclaimed barn wood, a coffee pot that gurgles like a happy brook, Wi-Fi strong enough for my remote debugging gigs, and Sarah's online pharmacology quizzes. The first potluck was awkward. Margaret brought tuna casserole, Tom grilled chicken that tasted like charcoal and hope. We ate off paper plates and argued over whether the common area mower should be gas or electric. Margaret won with a single raised eyebrow and a cost-benefit spreadsheet printed on the back of an envelope. Gas it was. For more cabins went up the following spring, framed by a crew Tom vetted himself. Waiting list hit 14 families, all pre-screened over coffee on my porch. We asked 3 questions. Can you shovel your own walk? Will you return a borrowed tool the same day? Do you wave at strangers? A yes to all 3 got you a tour. Property value tripled, not because we flipped it, but because people wanted in on something that didn't feel like a sales pitch. Realtors started calling it the anti-tract. Margaret keeps the garden rows straighter than I ever did, labeling heirloom tomatoes with popsicle sticks and her late husband's handwriting. Tom coaches Little League on the common lawn, teaching 8-year-olds to bunt, while Sarah live streams the games for grandparents in Florida. Ellen's consulting calendar book's solid. She charges double and still underbids the sharks who quote granite countertops before they quote dues. Daniel served his time, moved to a state that doesn't ask questions, and faded from the news. We kept the sign, sanded off, estates, and painted Willow Ridge, neighbors, not numbers. The letters are slightly crooked because Margaret held the stencil and Tom mixed the paint too thin. Nobody's fixing it. Last 4th of July, Margaret raised a paper cup of lemonade and toasted to every detour that still got us home. Fireflies blinked over the new swings. The twins, now 6, chased them with mason jars while Tom pretended not to notice the screen door hanging open. I knew every porch light that flickered, Ellen's motion sensor needs adjusting. Whose dog barks at raccoons? Margaret's beagle, Winston, and which kid leaves the rake by my gate? Sarah's nephew, visiting from Spokane. We turned a con into a neighborhood. The paperwork finally matches the people. The covenants run 4 pages, single-spaced, and the longest section is titled, How to Be a Decent Human. I still work remote for Microsoft 2 days a week, but the rest of the time I'm here, fixing Wi-Fi dead zones, splitting hostas with Margaret, teaching Tom's older girl to change spark plugs on the 64 Ford. The truck starts on the 3rd try now, same as always. Some nights I walk the perimeter at dusk. The cabins glow warm against the pines, and the creek still chatters the way it did when I was 10 and my dad taught me to skip stones. Only difference is the laughter carrying farther than the water. Daniel thought he stole my land. Turns out he just delivered my neighbor's gift wrapped. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been cheated by someone you trusted with your home, your savings, your future? Did you walk away, or did you fight to make it right? Drop your story below, especially the raw parts about injustice, what you wish you'd done differently, and whether you believe some wrongs can only be made right by building something better on the ruins. Strong opinions welcome. This comment section is our common ground.